Your car makes a noise, not a small noise, the kind that means money, and in the 3 seconds between hearing it and pulling over, your brain is already doing math. Can I afford this? What if it's $1,200? Do I have enough for rent if I fix it? That calculation, the one running before you even know what's wrong, is controlling your entire financial life. But there is a specific dollar amount where it stops, and it's lower than you think. Economists call it the bandwidth tax. When your savings sit below a certain line, your brain shifts into survival mode. It redirects the cognitive resources you'd normally use for planning ahead, for thinking strategically, for resisting impulse purchases, and it funnels all of them into one question: how do I get through this month? You don't feel it happening, but it shapes every decision you make. What you grab at the grocery store, whether you negotiate your salary or just accept what they offer, whether you take a risk on something that could change your career or play it safe because you cannot afford to be wrong. The line where this tax disengages sits around $10,000, not because that's a fortune, because of what happens inside your brain when you cross it. Researchers at Princeton set up an experiment at a shopping mall in New Jersey. They asked shoppers to imagine a $1,500 car repair, then gave everyone cognitive tests. The lower-income shoppers, the ones for whom $1,500 was a real emergency, saw their performance drop by roughly 13 IQ points. The wealthier shoppers showed no change. Same test, same mall, same afternoon. Then they lowered the repair cost to $150, and suddenly everyone performed the same. Rich, poor, no difference. The lower-income shoppers were not less intelligent. Their brains were busy. The financial pressure was eating the exact cognitive resources they needed to think clearly. The same team tested 464 sugarcane farmers in India before and after harvest. Before harvest, when the farmers were broke, their scores dropped. After harvest, same farmers, same tests, full cognitive capacity. The only variable that changed was money. Your brain is not broken, it is overloaded. Now picture your savings account over the past 3 years. You build it up to 2,000, maybe 3. Then a transmission repair hits, or a medical copay you didn't expect, or a slow month where you dip in just to cover rent. The balance drops back to $400. You stare at the banking app. You close it. You start over. 37% of Americans dipped into emergency savings last year. More than a third of them used it not for emergencies, but for monthly bills. Nearly 6 in 10 could not cover a $1,000 surprise from savings. 24% have nothing saved at all. This is the reset cycle. Save, deplete, save, deplete. The cycle breaks when your buffer gets large enough to absorb a hit without collapsing. At around $10,000, a $1,500 car repair doesn't reset you to zero. It stings, but the climb keeps going. That has never happened before. But the financial math is only the first shift. The second one is stranger. Loss aversion. Kahneman and Tversky found that losing something feels roughly twice as painful as gaining the same thing feels good. Finding $100 on the sidewalk is a nice moment. Losing $100 from your wallet ruins your afternoon. Apply that to savings. Once you hit 10,000, the thought of dropping below it stops feeling like a setback and starts feeling like a threat. That 5-figure balance becomes a floor. You start protecting it. You put back the cart item. You cook instead of ordering. Nobody told you to. Your brain rewired around the number, and now loss aversion is working for you instead of against you. And this is where it gets interesting. Because below $10,000, every financial decision passes through a filter you didn't choose. The filter asks one question: can I survive this? And because that question runs constantly, it crowds out every other question. Can I grow from this? Can I take a risk? Can I invest in myself? You've been calling this being realistic, being responsible. But those words are the filter talking. What you thought was pragmatism was scarcity doing your thinking for you. The decisions you made, tolerating a job that was grinding you down, saying no to opportunities because they scared you, those weren't wise choices. They were the output of a brain running on reduced bandwidth. You were not being conservative. You were being computed. When the bandwidth tax lifts, you don't just spend differently, you think differently, and then you see yourself differently. Psychologist Daphne Oyserman calls this identity-based motivation. People act in ways that match who they believe they are. When you're stuck in the reset cycle, your internal story writes itself. I am someone who struggles with money. But you cannot accidentally save $10,000. When you see that number on your screen, your brain has to update the story. You did this. The new identity forms. I am someone who saves. And once that locks in, saving stops being discipline and starts being default. The identity drives the behavior. The behavior reinforces the identity. The flywheel turns. Then comes agency. $10,000 in accessible savings is not just a buffer, it is room to move. You sit at your desk. Your manager asks you to take on another project with no extra pay. 6 months ago, you would have said yes without thinking. You needed every paycheck too badly to push back. But now you have 3 months of expenses in the bank. You can negotiate. You can say no. You can start looking for something better without the desperation that makes people accept the first offer they get. The money didn't buy you anything. It bought you the ability to choose. So why 10,000 specifically? 3 forces converge. First, average essential monthly expenses for an American household run between $3,200 and $3,500. 10,000 covers roughly 3 months. That is the emergency fund threshold where behavioral shifts begin. It is where your brain stops treating every expense as a crisis. Second, 10,000 is a round number that crosses a digit boundary. 4 figures to 5. Researchers found that round numbers act as psychological reference points. Baseball players are 4 times more likely to finish a season hitting .300 than .299. They change their behavior to land above the line. Your brain treats the jump from $9,999 to $10,000 the same way. Third, the identity evidence. You can save $500 by skipping a few dinners. 10,000 requires months of sustained effort. The number is large enough to be proof that something in you has changed. The mechanism is not compound interest. It is compound behavior. The money changes your cognition, which changes your identity, which changes your decisions, which builds more money. Now, I want to be honest. 10,000 is not a universal number. In San Francisco, where rent alone runs $3,000 a month, it covers a shorter window. And for some people, the barrier is not behavioral, it is mathematical. If your income barely covers fixed costs, no identity shift closes that gap alone. 73% of Americans say they're saving less because of inflation and rising expenses. That is structural, not personal. So when I say 10,000, what I really mean is 3 months of your essential expenses, whatever that number is for your life. The mechanism operates at whatever amount represents that threshold for you. The point is not the exact dollar figure. The point is that the threshold exists, and it is closer than it feels when you are standing below it. The number is not the point. The point is that there is a line between drifting through your financial life and directing it. Below it, your brain runs a survival program. Above it, you get your mind back. You stop asking, "Can I survive this?" and start asking, "What do I actually want?" $10,000 does not make you rich. It makes you free to think clearly for the first time in years, and clear thinking is where real wealth begins. If this changed how you see your savings, subscribe.